May 28th to June 11th in 1993 is the difference between Super Mario Brothers and Jurassic Park and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs have come a long way in those 2 weeks of how they look on screen. So.
I shouldn't be talking about the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie right now. In fact, I'm kinda sorry for even bringing it up. It's 2026, Nintendo is firmly in a new era of cinematic adaptations of their popular video games, dredging up an ancient Nintendo movie failure, and one that is a thoroughly beaten Yoshi-shaped horse by now feels both cruel and irresponsible, like being at your friend's wedding and telling everyone about the time he threw up in front of the entire class in middle school. Everyone should have moved on by now, but sometimes it's important to think about where someone started so you can reflect on how far they've come, and video game movies have mostly improved since the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie was released to poor reviews, a very muted box office reception, and a lot of confused fans, with even more confused parents, over 30 years ago.
Look! It's Koopa's tower!
Those guys will do anything for publicity.
I'm Brian Altano, and this is my flashback review of Super Mario Bros. From 1993. But hey, let's start with some positives. Despite so much of Super Mario Bros. Being a baffling interpretation of the source material, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo's takes on real-life Mario and Luigi going on an interdimensional road trip rescue mission actually works. Their banter is frequently charismatic, endearing, and fun, even if it's mostly quips and catchphrases as hallucinatory nonsense unravels around them. They've got great chemistry, and they're believable as two Italian-American brothers bickering and bantering as they attempt to run a failing Brooklyn family-owned plumbing business out of a van that barely works before they get pulled into an alternate universe and everything goes crazy. If that setup sounds familiar, it's because it's essentially the same setup in the far more successful 2023 animated Super Mario movie, an interesting coincidence considering plumbing companies and broken-down utility vehicles aren't ever really explored in the video games. It's a good thing that the core dynamic between Mario and Luigi functions as well as it does, since nearly everything around them seems to get more and more insane, bizarre, and distant from the source material every second. Super Mario Bros. Plays out like someone quickly read the back of the box of a Super Mario game and cobbled together something that attempted to fill in the narrative blanks with total nonsense, wrapped in set pieces that mix gritty New York street culture of the first live-action Ninja Turtles movie with Blade Runner's dystopian future, none of which really makes any sense for Super Mario.
Who's in charge of this whole?
Fantastical and psychotic things either happen as if they're totally normal and commonplace, or they're explained literally and in excruciating detail, a balance perfectly encapsulated by its opening minutes, where a voiceover explains the history of dinosaurs and a group of nuns receive an orphaned egg that hatches into a human girl. Why? No one knows, but it's possibly because one of the writers saw a picture of Daisy and another picture of Yoshi and decided they should be the same species.
You are so fresh and so clean.
Okay, so this is technically a movie review, so I'm now going to attempt to explain the plot of the movie with enough detail that you'll have a vague understanding of the story, but also vaguely enough that you don't get mad at me for spoiling it. Doing this for a movie that only vaguely has a story itself and also came out more than 3 decades ago feels slightly preposterous if we're being buddies here, but hey, these are the rules around these parts and I'm too old to start breaking them, so deep breath. Two brothers living in Brooklyn meet a woman whose job it is to dig up dinosaur bones under the Brooklyn Bridge, because obviously that's where the most dinosaur bones are, and because the engineers who build bridges somehow didn't find them despite there being so many bones down there. And also, they have no problem with people digging for dinosaur bones under functional bridges because that seems safe and fine for everyone involved. The woman gets kidnapped by two vaguely Italian guys from another dimension, and then the two slightly less vaguely Italian brothers fall through a magical illusory wall to find her, landing themselves in a manic lizard-themed version of Manhattan where everything is covered in wet webs and the cops are somehow more corrupt than in real life. From there, a villain leader who orders fast food using a gun pointed at his television makes everyone's life slightly difficult because he wants the woman's necklace, and he also does evolution experiments on his employees, which they all seem okay with. The brothers then have to save the woman, defeat the villain, and learn several things about dinosaurs that aren't applicable to reality. As the poster describes, this ain't no game. It is also frequently barely a movie, however, a byproduct of the sheer disdain that movie executives frequently have for films aimed at children, treating the audience like passive lab rats who will just consume whatever is dumped into the feeding tubes. Kids deserved and continue to deserve better. That said, Super Mario Bros. Is occasionally a fun time for a kids movie, despite the fact that dozens and dozens of its moments are completely unrecognizable as a Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's fast-paced, occasionally funny, and has likable protagonists taking on a big campy bad guy. It's also got lots of stuff that kids thought were cool in the early 90s, like tyrannosaurs, big vehicles with unnecessary stuff glued on them, like they're from an action figure line, fireball guns, a zip line, and prostitutes, question mark? More importantly though, it had the benefit of being one of the earliest live-action video game movies ever made, which means audiences didn't exactly have a strong point of reference for how these things should turn out, and also hadn't yet suffered through the somehow even worse Double Dragon movie, which released a year later.
I'm gonna barf!
Watching this movie is sort of like eating a bagged knockoff version of your favorite breakfast cereal. Yes, it has marshmallows and fun oat shapes and a silly character on the packaging, but it all just tastes so f***ing weird. These aren't General Mills Lucky Charms, they're First Street Magic shapes, where the leprechaun mascot is replaced with a clip art blue dinosaur and an off-putting saccharin paste slowly builds up on the roof of your mouth the longer you spend consuming it. I don't hate this movie, I swear. In fact, I try to revisit it every few years and see if there are any redeeming qualities to it at all. It's all just so profoundly strange, which, while is a more ambitious and occasionally interesting thing for a movie to be than safe, it does make me wonder what percentage of people in the credits had ever actually played the game. Imagine if me and 200 dogs recorded a song about being astronauts. The end result would be equal parts fascinating and horrible, but real astronauts would sit around for decades wondering why the dogs and I ever thought we were qualified to tell their story. It's possible that there were actually some people involved in the making of Super Mario Bros. Who had played the games before, but they either never spoke up or were completely ignored, two entirely plausible scenarios for a movie that went both over time and over budget, and by all accounts had a frequently contentious set. There are nitpicky things to get annoyed at because they seemed like the easiest details to get right from the games. Just basic stuff that anyone who had actually played a Mario game could have flagged. Like, why is Mario wearing yellow for a third of the film? Why is Luigi, who didn't even bother growing a mustache or gluing one on, wearing red for 2/3 of the film? Why are the power-up mushrooms replaced with a disgusting ceiling fungus that turns into a man? Why does Toad play guitar? Wait, the guitar guy was supposed to be Toad? Yes, just some of the many things to think about as the film flashes through its 104 minutes of runtime at both a breakneck speed and an eternity. Like that looping gif of the speeding vehicle that keeps looking like it's about to crash into a wall, but never actually does. And if 104 minutes seems like a long time, it's actually nothing in comparison to the 30 years that it took to see another Super Mario movie in theaters after the 1993 one did nearly irreparable damage to Nintendo's relationship with Hollywood.
Are we dead?
Did Mario fans deserve a better live-action Mario movie at the time? Probably, but it's hard to imagine how that could have looked in even the most capable hands. We had the Super Mario Super Show, a weekly cartoon where two real adults in colorful Mario Bros. Outfits introduced fun and silly Mario cartoons, all of which felt a lot more connected to the world established in the video games. So even back then, walking out of the theater after watching the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie had us feeling in our guts that something was off. The 1990 Ninja Turtles and 1989 Batman movies successfully made the jump to the big screen from cartoons and comics because outside of some larger-than-life costumes and a few over-the-top villains, they're predominantly set in gritty and grounded real-life cities. Sure, sometimes the Turtles have to go to Dimension X to fight a talking brain, and Batman has to beat up a shape-shifting theater actor, but in the late 80s, early 90s, the directors of these respective films expertly used modest practical effects, physical sets, and a little thing called restraint to expertly pick and choose which elements to carry from the source material to the big screen, resulting in two classic adaptations that fans still adore today. That is very much not the case for the Super Mario games, set in the completely fantastical and surreal Mushroom Kingdom, a place where turtles can fly, clouds can kill you with spike balls, and anthropomorphic bullets hover above you as you race to scale a large flagpole. No amount of time, money, or dedicated fandom could have nailed that world perfectly in 1993, or even in 2026, as there hasn't been an attempt at a live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie since. That's not to give this messy film a free pass, however. Just because let's make a live-action Super Mario movie is an inherently flawed premise today, or any other day in history, doesn't excuse the dozens and dozens of completely unhinged and demented and deranged decisions that the 1993 movie makes with an overwhelming amount of confidence every 3 seconds, right down to the final scene where it has the audacity to end on a cliffhanger meant to be resolved in a sequel that no sane businessman on Earth would ever greenlight.
You gotta come with me, I need your help.
What's wrong?
You're never gonna believe this.
Not only did it never get a second film, but you can't even buy, rent, or stream Super Mario Bros. Digitally by any legal means these days, presumably because Nintendo would rather have their recent Illumination animated movie of nearly the exact same name dominate your search results instead, kind of like the prevailing theory around Dubai chocolate, which I'll let you look up that one yourself. 1993's Super Mario Bros. Gets a 5. It's a relic as one of the first live-action video game adaptations. It had to crawl so the others could walk. It's got a solid core cast of characters thrust into a psychedelic smattering of scenes, hastily glued together in nearly offensively stupid ways, but it's also so strangely ambitious at times that it's hard not to respect whatever it is it's trying. Whether you've never seen it, revisit it often, or are actively suppressing memories of it for your own sanity, we can all agree that we'll continue to get bad video game adaptations forever, surely. But for better or worse, we'll never get one quite like this one again.
Hey everybody, that was IGN's review of 1993's Super Mario Brothers, just 30 years or so late. I'm Clint Gage. Joining me, I'm lucky to be the Luigi to his Mario. It's Scott Collura.
Hello.
But more importantly, we've got Brian Altano with us for this flashback review. Brian, how's it going, man?
I'm good. I don't know if this makes me like a Wario, a Waluigi, a Bowser, really anyone.
Probably it's Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, you know what?
Just
I'll take
knew
it.
that-
I realized I have his in-movie character action figure because of course I do.
I knew there was a reason we asked you to do this.
You hit me up and you were like, "Hey, do you want to review the Super Mario Brothers movie?" And I think I like paused for a second. I was like, "Oh, the new one, right? The Super Mario Galaxy comes out very soon. Great, that'll be a good time." And you were like, "No, the 1993 one."
The old shitty one.
Yeah, I was probably like 12 or 13 when this movie came out, and I had already known everything there is to know about the games. I was a huge fan of the NES games. The Super Mario World had just come to Super Nintendo a year or two before. I had a visual identity for what Yoshi looked like, right? And then this movie comes out, and it is attempting to take everything that we love from Super Mario Brothers and put it into a live-action kids movie. This is the first, I believe, the first American live-action adaptation of a video game.
Yeah, the first, particularly one of that scale. Like
Yes.
a big budget, proper studio, like a Hollywood machine made video game adaptation.
Not just stars, actors.
The names that are in the credits of this movie like belie a pedigree that the film just doesn't have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like because there's Hoskins and Leguizamo, obviously. Ed Solomon wrote Bill and Ted's and wrote Men in Black, I think later this year when it came out.
Oh, right.
And then the directors did Max Headroom, which is like a whole cult phenomenon thing. But then, and revisiting it this time, like seeing Fiona Shaw, like, oh shit, it's Andor's mom.
Andor's
Yes.
mom.
Like it's like the names that are around in this credits is it's wild.
Yeah.
Like it was a collection. People wanted this to be huge, is what it says.
It was very clearly an assembly of a lot of disparate but talented parts that could, in theory, come together to sort of congeal to be a good movie somewhere, somehow, right? That never really happens here, but there are lots of little things where you're kind of like, hey, you know what? That sort of works.
Dennis Hopper, like his career was so all over the place.
Sure.
Forever, but he's still, I mean, he's a legend.
In this movie and pretty much everything he's a villain in, right? Like he just knows how to ham it up, and he feels just menacing and psychotic enough that he could snap at any given moment. Do you buy him as Bowser or King Koopa? Never. For a second, does that even register as in your head? I think like they were like, okay, so Mario's got Yoshi in it, right? And Yoshi's a dinosaur. So how do we explain dinosaurs to kids? And so the movie opens with this weird 16-bit filter over like clip art of dinosaurs.
Yeah, but and the like stereotypically Italian, like they're Italian, these dinosaurs going like, it don't get no better than this. And
Hope
like,
we don't go extinct.
Yeah.
The friggin' meteor over here. And then all of a sudden it goes like, then there was a timeline shift, and in one of those timelines, dinosaurs are still here, and you're like, wait, what? You're losing me.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to a woman delivering a bundle of something to the steps of a church, and then a bunch of nuns open up a blanket, and inside is an egg that hatches into a baby girl. And you're like,
it's a tiny
okay,
little
hold
Samantha
on,
Morton.
hold on. You lost me. You lost my parents. You lost the kids. Everybody in the room is suddenly extremely confused. And then it's kind of just like strap in, because from here on out, things that resembled the stuff you recognize from the video games occasionally appear on screen in random order. But everything outside of that is just sort of sheer chaos. And in some ways, you kind of just have to respect that they just went for whatever it is they went for here.
It's got such a manic energy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like right out of the gate, it's like, we're gonna try so hard to make this movie good. We're not gonna stop. Like we're not gonna blink for the next hour and 44 minutes. You know, it's like. There's a few creepy moments too, like when it's Samantha Mathis, is that the actress?
Samantha Morton.
Samantha Morton. When the mob bosses show up at her dig site and he's like looking her up and down, and I was like,
yeah,
it's a family movie.
Well, and he threatens to kidnap and presumably sexually assault her. Is the insinuation
in this
of
kid's
that
movie.
Yeah. I do think it's funny, like in this movie's place as the first of something, right?
Yes.
Like you have to be forgiving of a lot of the warts, right? And I do think that 30 plus years worth of video game adaptations that we've gotten, and they've gotten better recently. This has been a fairly recent development that they've gotten better. I do think that history and the development of video game adaptations as a sort of a subgenre has been kind to this movie in a strange way.
I agree. I think that's exactly it. Like it's hard not to be sort of amazed at the swings they took, just because there like literally wasn't a playbook at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like the only version of Mario we had seen in sort of live action was like on the Super Mario Super Show, where he's introducing cartoons, and that's brief, like very vignette-y, sort of just like hanging out in this like apartment with some pipes. It's slapstick and goofy. And it just kind of comes and goes, right? That it's just them.
It's Mr. Mario's neighborhood.
That's all it is. Yeah, it's just them being like, check out some short cartoons, and it comes back. Right. Wow, that Koopa guy's out of his goddamn mind. Okay, cool. Coming up next, we got to get out of this room because this turns into a New Jersey opium den 15 minutes after we wrap. And so with this one, it was just kind of like, you know, we know about the production issues that happened here because it was this husband and wife directorial team that were basically openly fighting with everybody. There's this great Bob Hoskins quote about how the movie went like 10 weeks over, and he had his son was like, "Why'd you make this movie?" And he's like, "Well, you know, you needed shoes." And he's like, I didn't need shoes that badly. Like,
I could have worn my old shoes, Dad.
Like, video game adaptations have not gotten out from under the weight and the mistakes of this movie. But I totally agree with what you said, that the further we get away from this, the more you can kind of look at it with a different lens and just kind of be like, this is fascinating for so many reasons. One, because a big thing that we know now is Nintendo and a lot of other, Disney and Sony and all these other companies are, for the most part, really protective of their brands. Nintendo specifically are like, when they put Bowser appeared in Wreck-It Ralph. And a cool thing about that movie, which is a video game movie effectively, is that there's this scene where there's all these villains in therapy and anger management, basically. And all the villains came together, and the story behind the scenes of that was that every single intellectual property holder was like, my guy has to be the biggest. And Disney was like, they're all going to be the same size, except for the short ones. Just stop.
Yeah.
Okay? And it was like, well, they can't do this, they can't do that. At the time, Nintendo was basically just like, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, that sounds fine. We'll see you at the premiere.
Go nuts.
Times have changed, right?
Yeah, times have changed, and I think that's really cool that this existed at some point, right?
Nobody knew what to do, and everybody wanted to do something different. Mm-hmm. Like the development of this, you mentioned how weird the production was, but even the development of the script, like the first script was written by the guy that had just won an Oscar for Rain Man. And he was writing the first draft of this movie, and like you read some of the things about like, we want it to be like Wizard of Oz, or we want it to be like Laurel and Hardy, like these sort of like lofty, kind of, and you can see Ninja Turtle. You mentioned Ninja Turtles in your review too. You can see the influence of the recent successes, even Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah,
like there's some of that DNA in there too, and Blade Runner, and all of these things that people are the moons that these people were shooting for were so across the sky that like none of it added up to anything. But taken individually, they're interesting shots to take, you know?
The movie reminds me a little bit of David Lynch's Dune in that the movie doesn't work. It's not a good movie. But
in that, why not?
But no, but as you say, like there's these weird little bits and pieces of originality in it that are actually interesting and funny, and then some stuff that's just bad and horrible, you know?
Yes, yeah. And I think that's exactly the sort of maturity that I think should come with age, right? Where you are able to look at something like this in hindsight, away from being a disappointed kid or a confused parent, and just sort of be like, okay, so like all the things that Clint just listed, like those are all really good ideas on paper. There's a really cool cast. They built a bunch of really interesting sets. And so clearly, like, there were a bunch of hearts in the right place. It just didn't ever come together into a cohesive thing. And it is so fascinating to see them try to take specific elements from the game that were really fun, or even just moments that happen. And they're like, well, how do we movieize this, basically? And like, there's a scene where they take the central cast and they're like, we should put them down a warp pipe. But because the movie doesn't really have warp pipes, it just has like this wall that lets you fall into a dimension. They just go through a regular pipe. And I think they couldn't figure out how to make everybody slide at the same time. So they put them on like the world's filthiest mattress.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, like in the games. And you're like, it's so much more elegant in the games. Mario just stands and he goes down and he comes back out of the next one. Like, imagine him getting on just like somebody's throwing away like a particle blanket. And he's like, you know, he knocks all the bootleg VHSs off of it and like weird cutlery. And he's like, I'll ride this to the Mushroom Kingdom.
Or that's why you had to kill all those Koopas, because you needed their shells to travel the warp pipes, you know? Like,
and that they're like practical excuse for everything. They're like, all right, well, instead of throwing fireballs, he's got like a fireball gun and he's got a plunger gun. He can't just jump because he ate something that makes him jump higher. We're going to give him these mechanical hopping boots that, you know? Yeah. And so they have these like very grounded in-universe explanations for stuff that also has like a de-aging, de-evolution machine that turns people into Goombas. Like, sure.
It also turns people into geniuses too, which I thought was funny,
just depending on which direction you turn the dial. You know? It all adds up to me. Is like, I feel like you could have made a movie without the rights to Super Mario Brothers.
Yes.
You could have made a knockoff, like, you know, off-brand Sam's Choice version, and it would have been the same movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
I completely agree.
And seeing Yoshi on screen again made me. I went straight and looked up the release date of this movie. Came out 2 weeks before Jurassic Park. 2 weeks later, Jurassic Park was on screens. So it's May 28th to June 11th in 1993 is the difference between Super Mario Brothers and Jurassic Park and dinosaurs. On you know, it's dinosaurs come a long way in those 2 weeks of how they look on screen. So
the gulf in quality between those animatronics, and I remember seeing Yoshi specifically in like a low-res blurry picture in Nintendo Power that was just like, hey, they're making a Mario movie, right? Oh my god, it's like a real, they made him like a real, how are they doing that? That's crazy. Is he gonna get big enough to
Who's gonna ride him?
Yeah, like are they gonna ride him? That's like, what are they building towards here? And Nintendo Power's job was just to be excited about everything Nintendo, so there was nothing in there that was just like, I don't know, man.
Right, yeah. That's amazing.
This is one weird dissenting voice of a guy that doesn't work at Nintendo Power anymore.
But no, it was very fascinating because like 2 weeks later, you got Jurassic Park. You know, dinosaurs were all the rage, and this movie just sort of fell through the cracks, and it sort of stayed that way forever. And I find that really interesting. Like the way you explained it, both of you guys actually, it makes me think that if this had been something that came out in 2016. Called The Brothers, and it was done by a bunch of YouTubers who were basically just like, hey, let's do like a fan film that isn't like legally, you know, like in any sort of hot zone of getting, you know, pulled down by Nintendo, who is historically litigious. People would be heralding this thing as like a creative masterpiece, because in terms of a take on the source material, it's inspired. There's literally the trope in this movie where like characters are running down the street as other characters are carrying a large pane of glass for people not to walk through. And I'm like, man, this really has it all. They took everything from the cookbook.
But they subvert that because he doesn't run through it. He bounces off of it.
first ones to not run through the pane of glass, right? Yeah.
This is objectively bad. This movie is bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's forgivable, but it's very bad.
It is
and
bad,
like
yeah.
it's bad in such obvious ways that 30 years later you can look at it and be like, oh, like some of them start to turn into features instead of bugs.
Yeah.
You know, in your memory, and like it lives in it because. I mean, I remember going to see this in the theater. I think every single one of my friends went to go see this movie for their birthday somehow. All of my friends turned 9 in May that year.
2 weeks
but,
before,
like,
all in that 2 week period.
2 weeks before we all went and had our birthdays at Jurassic
Two
Park.
movies coming out around your birthday, so you got to pick one to bring all
Yeah.
your friends to. There's this one based on a book, and books are for losers. And there's the one based on a video game, and video games are cool. Cool, Dad, we'll
Yeah.
do the video game one.
You remember when I made you watch Apocalypse Now? You remember the guy at the end? Look, it's nice to have an official review score up on the site now for the original movie. There was one review for a handful of years ago. Some people found an old VHS tape of a director's cut that they like a fan site restored and released on the internet archive or something, and that somehow got a review score on IGN.
I mean,
but
there
we're talking about the original stuff here.
There's deleted scenes in this movie that people have found and try to cobble
Yeah.
together. You know, there's the tease at the end for a sequel that we'll never get that I think some people are still trying to retroactively invent or discover the story
Can't imagine
of.
there's not a petition out there for it.
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
But it does, again, like, you know, and as objectively bad as we can say this movie is, like, it does speak to the fact that people have a soft spot for it. If they're, you know, they're still out there trying to track down VHS copies. But we don't need to do that today. I feel like we've done enough here. Brian, thanks again, man, for reviewing a bonkers as hell movie. This was fun.
Of course. I'm happy to do it again in another 30 years.
Great. Yeah, we'll revisit. We're going to accidentally delete all of our reviews 30 years from now, and we'll have to do it again. But thank you, everybody, for watching another Flashback review. We'll be back with another one. So be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. We'll see you next time.